Hey everyone, just coming to you with this public service announcement. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First and foremost, it's free to do so. You don't got to come out of your pocket. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch of others platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's why I got on it. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, peace.
Leo's Bay, Islam to the moles. Can't get it again. I thought I was gonna put it down, Where you going, Mo? Back to the grove. No, I can't stay. No, I gotta go. No, I gotta grow. Blowing like water. Walk through the gates. My trials got harder. Felt like Nino, all in the corner. Felt like the tree. You told us in the garden. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Back to the grove. Better than stove. Need me a queen. Don't need no hoe. I need no hoes. I cancel that trick. Bad daughter of love. Yeah, you know that ain't it. Little bit of mud and a little bit of spit. I can see men like trees walking. I can see Lucy talking. That's 101 keys. Smoking tree of knowledge. Now I got the mud G's. Aiming for perfection. Standing on my square. Cause Allah is my protection. My God and my salvation. While they waiting, stop the hating. While they waiting, stop the hating. Where you going, Mo? Back to the grove. No, I can't stay. No, I gotta go. No, I gotta grow. Blowing like water. Walk through the gates. My trials got harder. Felt like Nino, all in the corner. Felt like a tree. Yeah, told us in the garden. Part of myself, I think I rise in the spirit of the seven, giving all praise to Allah, our honors to his prophet, Noble Drew Ali, for the purpose of uplifting fallen humanity, returning the keys of civilization back to the Asiatic nations in North America, for amongst the children of Africa. There is much wisdom to be learned, blessings, honor, power, and glory to he who sits on the throne, and to Islam forever and ever. Amen. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Where you going, Mo? Back to the grove. No, I can't stay. No, I gotta go. No, I gotta grow. Blowing like water. Walk through the gates. My trials got harder. Felt like Nino, all in the corner. Felt like a tree. You told us in the garden. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Leo's Bay, Islam to the moles. Can't get it again. I thought I was gonna put it down, Where you going, Mo? Back to the grove. No, I can't stay. No, I gotta go. No, I gotta grow. Blowing like water. Walk through the gates. My trials got harder. Felt like Nino, all in the corner. Felt like a tree. You told us in the garden. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Back to the grove. Better than stove. Need me a queen. Don't need no hoe. I need no hoes. I cancel that trick. Bad daughter of love. Yeah, you know that ain't it. Little bit of mud and a little bit of spit. I can see men like trees walking. I can see Lucy talking. That's 101 keys. Smoking tree of knowledge. Now I got the mud G's. Aiming for perfection. Standing on my square. Cause Allah is my protection. My God and my salvation. While they waiting, stop the hating. While they waiting, stop the hating. Where you going, Mo? Back to the grove. No, I can't stay. No, I gotta go. No, I gotta grow. Blowing like water. Walk through the gates. My trials got harder. Felt like Nino, all in the corner. Felt like a tree. You told us in the garden. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. I rise in the spirit of the seven, giving all praise to Allah, our honors to his prophet, Noble Drew Ali, for the purpose of uplifting fallen humanity, returning the keys of civilization back to the Asiatic nations in North America, for amongst the children of Africa. There is much wisdom to be learned, Blessings, honor, power, and glory to he who sits on the throne and to his Lamb forever and ever. Amen. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Where you going, Mo? Back to the grove. No, I can't stay. No, I gotta go. No, I gotta grow. Flowing like water. Walk through the gates, my trials got harder. Felt like Nino, all in the corner. Felt like a tree, yeah, tallest in the garden. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'. Part of myself, I think I'm ballin'.
Learn Spanish with Real Spanish TV.
No veo nada, no veo nada.
Click on words.
5037, La Familia Entertainment. Shout out, I know y'all thought I was dead. Been real woke. Shout out to Trip. Y'all just traveled with me on this journey. Shout out to Junior. Go ahead, Reese. Told us the sun. Shout out to Umberto. Classic. We ain't for the streets, yeah, we elevating. Swag on God, yeah, we levitating. Quit to call me Satan, I see why they hate time. We ain't for the streets, yeah, we elevating. Swag on God, yeah, we levitating. Quit to call me Satan, I see why they hate time. Say that I'm the devil, but really I'm God. And that's just two parts of the same pie. I'm the same guy, made a new transmuted, rebooted like the system in the mysticism. Put a prism up in a math class where you laugh first and laugh last. Time never was, can you calculate that? If man mean mine, can we go way back? Like Jesus in the hobbo. We ain't for the streets, yeah, but we don't fuck with 5-0. Trying to fuck the world, Johnny Bravo. Y'all thought that I was playing, not hearing what I was saying. See me on my knees, thought I was defeated, bitch, I was praying. So I ain't have to kill you cats. This chestnut checkers, I said trash for you rats. Bitch, I ain't never been down, cause I'ma be me whether or not y'all around. Throw the 5, fuck a pound, this Islam, you clown. I to the self, law and master. Physical is weak and the spiritual is faster. We ain't for the streets, yeah, we elevating. Swag on God, yeah, we levitating. Quit to call me Satan, I see why they hate time. We ain't for the streets, yeah, we elevating. Swag on God, yeah, we levitating. Quit to call me Satan, I see why they hate time. Throwing out that body, not even our brain. If I told you I was God, you would say that I'm insane. It's recoded done, yeah, you got to love me, man. 7 days up in my year with the devil in my ear. It's the kingdom of Allah, so you know I'm seeing victory. I'ma keep it real, man, I know you can't sick of me. Dog with the bar roll, but I ain't going mange. I seen the different lights, so I had to switch lanes. If truth is real right, I can't groove with no lames. Truth is real right, I can't groove with no lames.
Peace, everyone. This is Metaphysics Moor, and we're going to do something a little different. I'm actually going to go and reach out to my Muslim brother, Leo's Bay, on the phone. So while you just hearing me talk, if you're on the live, the Spotify live, you'll see me, but I will have him actually going in through the phone. I'm going to call him on my other phone so you'll be able to hear him out. Give me one moment. Islam. So, Mo, I got you on the live, on the Spotify live. So hopefully this will work out with the recording. So I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you being available. So I wanted to do the build. I know we discussed briefly. I asked you before basically, what you wanted to talk about. And you mentioned key 57, key 59, and key 64, right? And which I think is a very, you asked a very powerful question. It actually happens to be, one of the questions I put in my book, What is the Devil Sometimes Called? Because of the fact that, that question has arisen, though many people may not speak on it. You know what I'm saying? Just, there's kind of a confusion in the context of, in one part, in the key 57, it says, who were Adam and Eve? They are the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatics and Muslims. And then by the time you get to key 64, it says, give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve: Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. So naturally, because how we naturally associate the word descendants in our day-to-day language, we take it to be one and the same thing. Children, progeny, all of that, descendants, lineage, all that to be the same. So I want to kind of break that down, and really I'll be drawing from my book. But before I do that, I want to give you the opportunity, to kind of speak on anything else you want to add to what I just said.
I feel like you pretty much covered or you're gonna be covering what what my question is and what I'm thinking about. So yeah, I was just like I was telling you that day, I was trying to figure out how, well, not trying to figure out, but is it go from one thing and then how they end up being Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. So I mean, I'm just ready to get into it whenever you are.
Okay, I bet, definitely. So literally, one of the questions I asked, I put it in on page 76 of my book. The question is, why are Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast the 5 names given to the descendants of Adam and Eve? And the answer is, again, the key to the answer of this question lies in the word descendants. The word descendants comes from the root word descend. The actual word descend means to fall, as in the fall of man. The question itself stems from one of the Quran questions of the 4 Moorish Americans in key 64 of the Quran questions for Moorish Americans, which states, give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve: Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. Okay. And earlier I mentioned in my book that the Garden of Eden story, as mentioned in Genesis, speaks of the progeny of Adam and Eve being cursed and in constant conflict with the children of, well, they say the serpent, but the Hebrew word is Nakash, which means the whisperer. So this story also symbolizes the descent or fall of man in his constant battle with his lower self. Now, one of the questions that is asked is, for what purpose was the Moorish Temple of America founded? For the uplifting of fallen humanity. So uplifting fallen humanity entails raising a person from his or her lower self to his or her higher self. So it's important to remember that man fell, as described in the first chapter of the Circle 7. And man's fall is a descent. And thus human beings are now classified as descendants in a spiritual sense. You see what I'm saying? So with that, just keeping that in mind, as time progressed, fallen humanity assumed many different malevolent attributes. Okay, this is where the names come in. The names are attached to these attributes. So it's important to note that key 64 only mentions 5 names. However, the key does not say give the 5 names, right? There were many names. And out of those names, key 64 just mentions 5. So to kind of break it down, I can first go into Lucifer, the breakdown of Lucifer. But before I even continue into that, Did you have any questions or any thoughts on what I just said so far?
Nah, not really. The only thing that popped in my mind is like, I believe, you can parallel one of the degrees to the nations of God's and earth where they, what is the savage? You know what I'm saying? So I know part of the verbiage they use, like one who has, abandoned knowledge itself and lives a beastly way of life. So, that's the word that pops in my mind was like, beast on beast, you know what I'm saying? And living a way of life. So, that's the only thing that comes into my mind, as well as, when one of the modes demonstrating on as far as what the dragon is, you know what I'm saying? So, like, if that is, which from my understanding, corrupt government, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I'd be interested in, learning more as far as, as far as like the 5 names and, exactly what the rest of them are pertaining to. So, yeah, the floor is open whenever it's yours, Ma. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Mo. Absolutely. And you said something very key about, those lessons within the Nation of Islam about the savage. And that's true. That's the exact parallel. You know what I'm saying? The savage and the beast. So those names, that's another name given to the descendants of Adam and Eve, the savage. You know what I mean? So these all attribute to attributes of attached to the lower self. The question is asked, what does the lower self breed? Hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything it harms. So those actions are related, or those byproducts of the lower self are related to the attributes and the characteristics of the lower self that are in which those names are attached to it. So going to the question of who is Lucifer. So Lucifer is nothing more than the King James version of a Hebrew word, halal, that is mentioned in Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 12. So the word Lucifer literally only appears one time in the Bible. And according to the Strong Concordance, the word is translated as shining one or light bearer. So even though we hear the term Lucifer used a lot, particularly among Christians, Lucifer was only mentioned one time in the whole Bible. So also the word Lucifer is derived from the Latin Vulgate, that is translated to mean the morning star or the planet Venus, right? So you have the morning star, the planet Venus, the light bearer, okay, or light bringing. You know what I'm saying? The bringer of dawn. So literally that title of light bearer, right, which is, in the Hebrew would be halal. Halal means shining one or light bearer, became a proper name. They took that title and then it became a name for the devil. Later on, Christians began to do that. Okay. And as he was called before the fall, you know what I'm saying? That's what it implies, though that's not really the actual story of it. So to get into, that goes into that whole thing. Like there's many different stories about Lucifer, like Dante's Inferno and the book Paradise Lost. You see what I'm saying? So, but the key to remember that the titles of Morning Star and Light Bearer were applied to many people, many different beings, not just this one character that we call in the Bible Lucifer. So, it denotes a quality, and I'm going to speak to that quality of what it is. Jesus, also in the Bible, is called the morning star. You know what I'm saying? And the symbol of the morning star falling from the skies is a common motif, you know, in the ancient Canaanite theology when they talk about, and that comes back to Ashtar, you know, Ishtar, and all of that. So you see what I'm saying? So basically, it goes deep into that as far as that term Lucifer. But what the whole story of Lucifer, the reason why it's used is because it denotes someone who was full of pride, vanity, and, you know, they were shining bright, you know. But the term, that's where they get the term, the pride comes before the fall. Out of pride and vanity, you know what I'm saying? They, in lack of humility, that person thought they were bigger than what they were. That's the whole story behind the concept of Lucifer itself. But the word Lucifer itself simply means light bearer. And again, that comes back to a lot of these different other these other stories that predate the Bible. Like I said, in ancient Moabite, it would be Ashtar. In the Babylonian, it would be Ishtar. And then you even get Isis, you know, and then you get Esther, Easter, and all that other stuff going into that aspect as far as this this concept of this what they would call this morning star being. You know what I'm saying? So that's the first one. That's the first one, basically. And I can get into the rest, but before I do that, I don't want to go too long. What was your? Did you have any questions or thoughts on what I was breaking down?
I'm digesting what you know what you give it to me, and I praise to Allah. I appreciate it. You know what I mean? Because you know, man must know well his lower self. You know, that way he can be his higher self. So you know, getting a breakdown of those descent natures is giving me a clear understanding. You know what I'm saying? You know. I guess you could say like the function of each one, like I mentioned earlier, as far as what the dragon is, you know what I mean? So, I'm following what you're saying, and I get what you're saying. So,
Indeed. So we can get into Lucifer, Satan. So we get into Satan. I want to kind of get into that, but before I even get into, I can get into Satan. I'll go and get into Satan. But Satan is also related to another word, which is also another a name given to the descendants. Okay, so I'll give you the example where I'm trying to get into, right? So one of the names you may hear people use for the devil is Belial, right? Belial. So that's literally a Hebrew word that means worthless. Okay, so that actually goes all the way back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. You'll find that word. But Belial, when people describe Belial, they describe Belial as the angel of destruction. Okay. And then, so they would equate that later on to the word Satan. Satan is really just a Hebrew word that means adversary. That's all it means. So anything can be your adversary. So just literally putting like that. I think I spoke about it before in our last bill. Like anything that's adverse, an adverse force to you being one, you know, with the omnipotent. You know what I'm saying? That becomes your adverse force. You know, it could be a person. It could be a situation. It could, you know what I'm saying? It can come in the form of many different things. A person's job could be their adversary. You know what I mean? Anything that takes on the force that takes you from
or kind of hinders you from elevating to your higher self, that becomes an adversary. But in the context of the descendants of Adam and Eve, humanity has become an adversary to themselves. You know what I'm saying? We're destroying each other. We're destroying the planet. You know what I'm saying? We're constantly doing things that work against us to hold us back on a spiritual aspect as opposed to elevating us forward. You know what I'm saying? Again, when you tie this back to what does the lower self breed? Hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. When you harm somebody, you're an adversary. You know, the purpose, the function of an adversary is to harm, you know, to be the foe. You know, that goes back to chapter 1. Without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength. So that foe, right? That foe is that adversary. That foe is that Satan. And then that goes back to, you know, the question, what did the higher self say to the lower self at one time when he met him? Where are you going, Satan? So if the lower self is not only described as devil, but as Satan, then the lower self becomes the adversary to the higher self insofar as the lower self is the body of desires, right? So desire is the counterpart of discipline. You know, even when you look at the term Jesus and the 12 disciples, 12 disciples is 12 disciplines. So it's the concept of being disciplined to control your desires. You know what I'm saying? To control the carnal self so that you can raise up, you know, to the higher planes of life. So that goes back. We talked about the crucifix, you know what I'm saying? You know, last week, being fixed to the carnal body, right? So when you look at it like that, what are we saying? Anything that you desire can potentially be that thing that harms you. You know what I mean? Like overeating, you know, saying wanting too much of the luxuries of the world, being too tied into this life, you know, that can be your adversary and that can be your foe. So like anytime you look at the term Satan, you're going to see the word, you know, that's just another word. Even in the Quran of Muhammad, when it says shaitan is just the Arabic word of Satan. And that's really all it is, you know, as far as that is concerned. Yeah, that's pretty much straight up and down that. And then, of course, what was the answer the lower self gave to the higher self? I'm going to and fro in the earth, seeking whom I may devour. So that lower self, you know, that which is the adversary, seeks to devour each of us in that context. In other words, we get caught up in the world. You see what I'm saying? You get caught up in the world, you become that lost soul. You become that person that is not in tune with the reality, which is Allah and man, the higher self. So, you know, that's as far as, you know, that's kind of basically summing up Satan. So any thoughts on that, Mo? Islam. And yeah, I just want to, before you get back on, just want to pretty much say that, you know, once we look at it from this context, you know, it takes a lot of the spookism out once we getting into the definition of these words. And that was really my intent when I wrote the book, What is the Devil Sometimes Called? Because we hear these terms a lot, but, you know, we don't really go into the origin of the words and what they mean. You know what I'm saying? So that was pretty much it. But I yield the floor to you, Mo.
Islam, I do apologize on top of that as well. I got called in to work, but yeah, just you know, that's what I was thinking earlier when you mentioned Satan. I know we went over it a little bit in the last discussion. The only other thing that comes to mind, like, you know, as far as, like, you know, the adversary, or like you mentioned, what did the higher self say to the lower self? in the Bible, you know, it's a similar writing. You know what I mean? It says walking, you know, going up and down. You know what I mean? So that's something else that comes to mind when we talk about going up and down and coming back to the crucifixion and stuff like that. Because you know, in order to receive those, you know, those treasures from Allah, you know, we got to go beneath the rocky soil of carnal things, and you know, that's when that sacrifice of the carnal self comes into play, that we can receive those treasures that we're supposed to lay up in heaven, you know. So, and I feel like, you know, that's what the whole purpose of taking that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding onto the next plane. That way, we, you know, because you know, we're gonna have to do some things there for understanding. So that's the only thing that comes to mind. And like I said, as far as coming out of the Bible, it kind of reminds me of the Kundalini energy as well, and because it says, you know, he's walking up and down in the earth. And we understand what the earth is, and from my person understand, you know, it's the body. You know what I mean? So up and down in the earth, that Kundalini energy is powerful. You know what I'm saying? It's very powerful. We can build or we can destroy with it. But like you said, if we are in the character of Satan, which is the adversary, and his job is to devour, then, you know, we probably not, you know, probably not building on nothing. You know what I mean? But in a positive way. But yeah, that's just what comes to mind. Other than that, I yield the floor more.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. You made a key point about that Kundalini energy and walking up in, you know, in the earth, you know, being likened to the body. Yeah, that ties back into the law, the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. So yeah, definitely that's true, because you said that because the serpent, you know, that Kundalini energy is represented by the serpent. You know what I mean? So, or they, you know, as they might say, the serpentine fire, and serpentine energy. So rising up from the base of the lowest chakra, you know what I mean? And that lowest chakra, which is really connected with your passions, and raising up, you know, to the higher chakras, all the way up to the pineal gland and the crown chakra, is that also ties in with the aspect of the lower self and the higher self, as far as channeling that energy, because a lot of that energy that gets back into the sexual energy. You know what I mean? One of the things I mentioned in the book, early in the book, in What is the Devil Sometimes Called, is I spoke about the term carnal, right? So the lower self is the carnal body, right? And the carnal body, carnal is, when you go into the etymology of the word carnal is associated with lust, sexual activity, like carnal knowledge. You know, in law, they talk about having carnal knowledge of a minor. You know what I'm saying? So all that deals with the sex act. So one of in the Bible, even in the Bible itself, you know, the Garden of Eden story, the first thing that happened after they ate the fruit, Adam and Eve, was they saw that they were naked and they were ashamed. You know what I'm saying? So that also kind of implies something sexual. So even with, you know, all of that, you know, they say the world's oldest profession is prostitution. You get what I'm saying? So it's channeling that sexual energy to transmute that. You know what I mean? A lot of great men we know fell from their high positions due to falling victim, you know, falling weak to lust. You know what I mean? So again, you spoke, you know, you just dropped something very powerful, and people can understand about that, you know, channeling that energy. You know what I'm saying? Transmuting that Yeah, absolutely, Mo.
Islam, can I add on for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so and that always reminded me. Cause I used to think to myself, the first half of the Moor's Holy Quran is the missing 18 years of Jesus' life that's not in the Bible, and then the other half is holy instructions for the Prophet over to Ali. And something that was interesting to me was the first instruction. He said, I'm paraphrasing as well. He said, beware of, young men, beware of all allurements of wantonness.
Yes.
And I got to breaking those words down one day, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And, and you mentioned the disciples and the adversary, right? So, that energy, like you said, that's what I was speaking about on when they mentioned something about the soul globe and the 12 cranial nerves. And that energy reaching, I guess, that fluid traveling up your spine and reaching the 12 cranial nerves. I guess it I guess it raises the vibration and gets them active more. But each one, from my understanding, each one of those nerves control the function as far as hearing, seeing, smelling, and things of that nature, tasting, movement. So, if you can raise it up, and maintain it there, you know what I mean? And the thing is, you'll be able to see better than others. You'll be able to smell better than others. You'll be able to taste better than others. Function, you know what I mean? You really go, to me, that's putting on the armor of God, or, putting on the body of Christ. You know what I mean? That's what that means to me. And as well, like you said, the adversary, when we break down the ad and the verb, like advertisement, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, they try to appeal to, some kind of sexual desire, nature, or something along those lines, because if they can get you to release this energy, then, those 12 cranial nerves, they're not going to be, so from my portion of understanding at least, they're not going to be functioning to their full capacity.
Right.
And as far as, we can still tie this into the crucifixion, because, from my portion of understanding that, how do you say the back region of the brain?
Yeah, the medulla oblongata.
The medulla oblongata, correct. From my understanding, this friend of mine, she's in med school, and that saying, she was getting into the chambers of the heart. You know what I mean? So the chambers of the heart and that region of the brain and that liquid, it all has to do with like a spark, like to the heart that kind of gets it going. So something that came to mind was as far as if you really on your deen, maintaining your deen, and things of that nature. That's another way to raise that energy. And one portion of understanding, if you can get that right spark to the heart, and we base it off energy and vibration, you get that right spark to the heart, and the heart's got so many chambers. I just that those words chambers. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's a certain light or vibration, you'll be able to receive certain information from the ethers that you wasn't able to before. But those are just the things that come to my mind, as we got into a little bit more. But I give the floor, Mo.
It's fine, Mo. Yeah, Mo, you right on it. That demonstration you spoke about, and I mentioned the 12 disciples, but what I'm saying, what you will open up the door was something very deep about, something pertaining within us, how those 12 disciples are actually aspects within us. And what I want to do is kind of touch on that. You know what I mean? Well, one of the things I want to do is speaking of that. Well, let's take it back to this. Let's take it back to this key, right? We're going to go to the keys. Key 38 and key 39 in our Morse questionnaire. And so that key, first one says, what is an angel? An angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh, right? And then the following key is, what are angels used for? To carry messages to the four corners of the world, to all nations. So
the very word angel in Hebrew would be malak, right? In Arabic, it would also be malaik, right? In the Old Testament, the last book in the Old Testament is Malachi, which literally means my angel or my messenger, because the word angel comes from the Latin word angelos, messenger, right? So just taking it from that word, right? So we know, like Elohim, when you get into the Strong Concordance, Elohim can be angels, it can be gods, it can be judges, magistrates, princes, rulers, etc. So angels, I'll keep this in mind. I'm trying to put this in a context. They talk about angels in the book of Revelations. Okay, talk about book of Revelations guarding 12 gates. And keep them just gonna go into there. So, and it's going to tie back to, again, it's going to also tie back to what we was talking about, the give five names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve, because it also speaks about the dragon in the book of Revelation. So when you go to the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation, again, the number 12, at some point in time, it talks about a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, right? 7 crowns on his head, right? And his tail drew a third part of the stars from heaven. Okay, and the stars are representative of the angels. So we're talking about fallen angels. But the point I'm trying to get into, because in that key, in one of the keys, it says what people represent the lower self. That key 69. Those who were cast out of the holy city and those who accept them teachings. Okay, so cast out of the holy city. Okay, within that chapter 12. Okay, it talks about Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon and his angels. Okay, and the dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, by the time you get to the 21st chapter, okay, it speaks about what they call that holy city. So I'm tying this all in. So we get into the aspect of those who represent the lower self. We know the lower self, also called the devil. We know the lower self is the carnal body. So those representatives are those angels. Those angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh. So from an internal aspect, those thoughts, right? Those fallen thoughts, you know what I mean? Those fallen thoughts represent the lower self. They were cast out of the holy city. You know what I mean? Holy is pure, purified. You know what I'm saying? So purity paves the way for love. So when there's a lack of purification of the self, purification of the soul, you know what I'm saying, you're infected with those fallen thoughts, those decadent thoughts. So now, 21st chapter is in the Bible, it talks about John. I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. And we know heaven is a state of mind. So we know that, right? Talks about the Alpha and the Omega. And when it goes into it, one of the things it says about this holy city, right? And this holy city is really you. You know what I mean? It's really each of us. Each of us represents, in that context, a holy city. So it speaks about having the glory of God. Her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates. So this city has 12 gates. And at the 12 gates, 12 angels, right? So, and then it even says, even furthermore, he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is of an angel. So an angel is a man. So it even goes further and further, 12 gates of 12 pearls, and so on and so forth. And it talks about the light within that city. But the point of I'm trying to make with that, adding it on to what you just said, okay? When we break that down into that aspect, these angels, which are thoughts that guard these gates, these messages, right? There's a book called 12 Powers of Man by Charles Fillmore. It was written in 1930. And he dived into the 12 powers of man, and he connects it with the 12 disciples and all of that. And one of the things he says, and I'm just going to read a passage. He says, the subconscious realm in man has 12 great centers of action with 12 presiding egos or identities. When Jesus had attained a certain soul development, he called his 12 apostles to him. This means that when man is developing out of mere personal consciousness into spiritual consciousness, he begins to train deeper and larger powers. He sends his thought down into the centers of his organism. Remember that, the thought, the angel, right? And through his word quickens them to life. Where before his powers have worked in the personal, now they begin to expand and work in the universal. And he talks about what's called a gangliotic center. Okay, so saying the 12 angels or the 12 disciples, each personality operates through a collection of nerves, cells, known as a gangliotic center. So there's 12, he's saying that there's 12 gangliotic centers, which would be considered the 12 gates. So that's the center of the brain, 1, 2, your loin, your private area, 3, the pit of the stomach, 4, the back of the heart, 5, the root of the tongue, 6, in between the eyes, 7, the front front lobal brain, front part of the brain. 8 is the center part of the brain. 9 is the navel. 10 is the medulla oblongata. We just talked about that. 11 is the abdominal region. And 12 is the specific area of sexual function. So that's according to Charles Fillmore, that there, if you look at it, there's 12 gangliotic centers of nerves that are placed in these areas. And what happens is these 12 gates, because, nerves send electrical impulses and the thoughts, and we have the power to activate these and elevate them in a much higher realm. You know what I'm saying? When we develop our consciousness from personal to spiritual. So that, I just wanted to add that on to what you just said.
I definitely appreciate that. That's a good illustration right there. I was definitely.
Indeed, Mo. Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you said what you said, because that sparked me to actually build on that. You know what I'm saying? I think that was important to kind of add to the build in terms of what we're discussing. You know what I mean? So yeah. So this kind of demystifies the whole aspect of what the devil is and things of that nature. And I think that's important that we have that type of conversation. But yeah, I appreciate you, Mo, for making yourself available on the build. I know you're tarrying right now, so I won't hold you long. But before I conclude, is there anything you want to say?
Not understand what you just said, then I believe everybody's gonna have a great day today. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Absolutely.
All praise to Allah.
All praise due. Absolutely, bro. And I absolutely honest to you, Mo. I appreciate you, brother, as always. And we'll do it another time. And appreciate everybody for listening in. Till next time, peace and love.
Peace and love.